Oh my God.
Well done.
Afternoon. So what I want to do is, for this one, is I'm going to try and make a series of stories from my experience, from catches that meant a lot to me at the time and still do. So not that I'm jumping on the bus and copying anyone else and doing it. It's anything to do with talking about history and carp fishing is something I just love doing. So what I want to do on this video is take everyone back to a certain August in 2020, and what happened was, a lot of us would know, it was still when COVID was gathering pace pretty quickly, but what was happening at the time, and just even before the first sort of instance of COVID, me and a guy called Neil and his son was talking about doing a trip to France. Now, I've been to France many times, but I've never been fishing outside of England at this point, and so obviously I was full of excitement because, again, the opportunity of me doing this wasn't there before, but now it is, or it was then. So full of excitement and apprehension, and a little bit nervous at the time. Was, where was we going to go? So there was plenty of talk about where we was going to go, and then fast forwarding it a bit, the Carp Aquarium popped up, and it seemed to be the one that we was going to choose. It was a very, very sort of nervous time for me because I so wanted to go to France, but at the same time I was really, really concerned about potentially being stuck in another country, because with these sort of like scenarios at the time, there was the media hasn't done anyone any favours whatsoever, because there was a lot of scaring tactics going on, I feel, but it was still something to be really, really concerned about. I'm married. I've got 4 kids, being one of them's older and doesn't live here, but I've got 3 younger children. I had a baby at the time, a young baby. Well, I say young baby, just under a year old. So there was a lot of concerns there. Especially, the last thing I want to do is be stuck in a country not knowing when I can literally get on that boat or on that train and come back. So it was a massive concern. Me and Neil were talking in depth throughout, and then literally it was he phoned me, threw me right under the bus a little bit. He phoned me quite late, and it was about 10 o'clock, and he said, "I've booked it, I've paid for it, you need to do the same." So my wife is just amazing, being next to me at the time. She was saying, are you going to go? Are you going to do it? And I was just like, yeah, I'm very, very nervous though, but I still really, really wanted to go. I wanted to go more than anything, but I had to be a little bit sensible with it. So the unknown is always the difficult thing. So in the end, she was talking in my ear roll for about 5 minutes, and I just pulled the trigger, and I booked it, and paid for the train. What did we do? The ferry. Sorry, paid for the ferry, and then paid for the fishing trip at the lake. The guy that we was talking to is a guy called Ben at the aquarium. Very nice guy. But then I started to sort of like get a little bit shaky about the trip. Like if suddenly there's if there's a bit of a lockdown, how's it going to fare with our money and stuff? Are we going to, is it just going to be put on hold and then we can come back over after? All of these were concerns to me at the time. But in hindsight, we didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen. So getting closer and closer and closer to the trip, I spoke to Ben a couple of times, and he was a very nice guy, he is, Ben, and he was, you know, assuring us and stuff that, you know, everything should be fine and X, Y, Z. But in reality, he didn't even know himself. He didn't know how it was gonna pan out. So, but yeah, it was slowly gathering pace, and then it's sort of like it was what it was, and then literally it was like a week before we were supposed to be going, and I'd done nothing at this point. Literally done absolutely nothing. I haven't packed for the trip, got nothing ready. So a week before, it was full systems go for me. So I was literally getting all my gear ready really quick. I just bought a new van, not long bought a new vehicle at this point. I bought a Transit Custom, limited custom, which is probably one of the best cars to go abroad carp fishing in, because it was only me in the vehicle, and literally there was so much room. I could take everything in the kitchen sink, which generally I do. So got all ready for the trip, packed up. Neil and Neil's son Joe, they were going to have a food package, but I'm one of these guys that I like sort of like cooking for myself, so, and that's exactly what I did. But anyway, day before the trip, the van was fully loaded again, and the nerves started going a little bit. It's like I get more nervous now going fishing now than I do when I went to France, because I didn't know what to expect. I suppose there was a bit of naivety there for me that I expected to catch, which clearly is not the case. And you know, Neil wasn't making it any easier for me. He was saying, "Oh, you're going to catch this, you're going to catch that," and that continued even to the point where, you know, it's the alarm's gone off in the early hours of the morning, and my vehicle's obviously all packed. I didn't really have to do much. I kissed my wife goodbye. The kids were still in bed, and I jumped in my vehicle and started heading to the meet point, which was Clackett Lane. So I met Neil at Clackett Lane, pulled into the back of the petrol station, got out, we said a quick hello, and we was on our way, and driving down there, and we was on the phone the whole time, I think, talking the whole way down there, and we got down to Folkestone, or Dover, sorry, and we pretty much got in there. We was early. We was really early. Our boat actually was, I think it was about an hour or so later. So we pulled over at the BP garage and we had a quick chat, and was wondering if we'd just go up to what do you call it, up to the dockside and book in, see if we can get an earlier boat. And anyway, long and short, that's exactly what we did. We got onto the boat a lot earlier and boarded, went and had some breakfast. Obviously with this sort of trip, Neil's been to France a few times fishing, and this was my own. Again, I felt quite relaxed, if I'll be honest, apart from when Neil started saying, "Oh, Pete's going to catch 50," which is, you know, he was joking around. There was no way on this earth he knew what potentially was it was a bit of a bold statement to make, and there was no way on this earth that he had any inkling of anything. So you know, I just took it in my stride, and I was just literally dreaming. And what I'd done before I'd gone, before we'd left, in the days and weeks leading up to the trip, I've been looking at the website, and there are some amazing fishing there. Like for anybody, there are some dream fish in there. But there was one, and this is on my children. There was one fish that stuck out for me, and it had been caught in from what I understand, the April before. So obviously I started looking at the website probably about 2 weeks beforehand. And we were literally in July at this stage. So in the April, from what I understand, this fish had been caught, and it was 62, 63 pounds, and it was what I would call and the old school mirror. And you know, don't take this, it's just me. So the old school mirror is what I would call it. Would be the one with the big gut, the lovely arch back, you know, the big head, and it almost, even though it's big, it's sort of like short, you know, and but it's literally got an absolute gut on it, massive rear rudder on it, big head, arch back, scales along the top of the back, or some scales, and a couple scales on its tail, and this thing was enormous, you know, and I was sort of like transfixed on that fish. And again, I didn't know what to expect. You know, the thing is, for me now, at this stage, from when we was about to go, you know, I've been carp fishing since I was a kid, but I've only literally taken it serious probably about a year and a half before that, where I was literally trying, and effectively I was probably, you know, where things have moved forward so much, I was effectively sort of like starting again a little bit back then. But you know, I have this tendency that I won't generally ask a question. I will just sit back and watch, and then learn, and keep on watching and keep on watching. You know, I feel that in carp fishing you learn from every time that you go. There's people that are out there that have been carp fishing more actively, and caught an amazing abundance of fish, but you know, it was still, you know, I felt that I needed to get back in, you know, jump back on the saddle, so to speak, and I was proper on my way to doing that. So going back, this fish proper stuck out in my head, and you know, there was loads of other fish in there that are like equally as gorgeous, but this one just stuck out for me the most out of all of them. And you know, I didn't know what to think about it, and I was just sitting there daydreaming and dreaming about it as much as anyone else would. But anyway, so we're on the ferry, we've had a breakfast, and now I can feel the excitement sort of like kicking off a little bit. And then we had to go back to the vehicles, and then we drove off, and then it was like a 2.5 hour drive. In my bright idea, I said to Neil, let's stay off the toll roads, it only adds 40 minutes to it. But the thing is, it's like when you're excited and you're going somewhere, especially like that, the journey just seems forever, you know. It's just like, it feels like you're driving for hours and hours and hours, and in hindsight it's not hours. It was a couple of hours, but in the end I think Neil's patience went a little bit, and so he was in front of me and I was just following him, and then he jumped on the toll road and sort of like sliced off half an hour of the drive. But so I was on my own in the vehicle driving, and Neil and Joe were obviously in the car together. So, and you know, I'm a man enough to admit it that I actually started feeling homesick a little bit. I was going to miss my family. I'm a proper family man, and you know, I love my carp fishing and I do go quite a bit, but I still miss my family like mad. So you know, my wife, I was probably doing a nutting because I was phoning her probably every 20 minutes, and in the end she was just like, which probably done me a massive favour, you know. She just said to me, for God's sake, you know, don't stop panicking, stop worrying. I know, and the thing is, for me as a dad and a husband, I'm in another country, you know, so if they're saying it wrong, that's what the thing was bugging me out a little bit. And in the end she was just like, for God's sake, stop panicking, everything's fine, enjoy yourself. And that's how amazing she is, so that she's like that. So I'm really lucky. But anyway, so on the sat nav I could see that literally we're getting closer and closer and closer to the lake, you know, and we ended up getting there a little bit early. I think the only time we could get in there was about 1 o'clock. I think it was 12:30, 1 o'clock, I think it was, and we was early. So we was about 10 minutes out, and there was like a big sort of like shopping centre in France, shopping sort of like a blue water type thing, but a little bit smaller. And we come across that, and we stopped, and there was a decathlon there. And of course, anything to do with fishing, we went in there and just had a little nose around just to kill some time. I think we looked for some food, but it weren't really the right sort of places to go and get some food there. So we killed a little bit of time. Absolutely blazing hot it was. Like ridiculously hot. And yeah, it was really, really, really hot. And I was thinking, oh my God, if we chose the right time to come carp fishing here. So we got back in the vehicles. I made the 10-15 minute drive, I think it was, down to the lake. And initially we got there, the sat nav was saying that we was here, and the people that hopefully are watching this, if they've been to the Carp Aquarium before, but there's no real signs outside. There's literally, we drove down the right road, so if you come off the main road, turn left, there's sort of like a square field. And then at the end of this square field, maybe just 100 metres from the main road, there's like a little dirt track, and the gate is down there for the length of the field. And but there was no sign saying Carp Aquarium that way, you know. So we drove through. There was like a housing estate type, it was like a posh housing estate, and we drove around there a couple of times and ended up coming back. And then Neil was in front of me still at this time, and then he spotted a couple of vans that were at the gate. So I don't know if he knew or if he just took potluck and drove down there. Ends up there was 3 other guys that were fishing the lake at the same time as us. So there was only 6 of us on. No, tell a lie, there was 7 on, because there's a hut and there was a guy and his family that was already there, from what I understand. But there was 3 other guys. They come from like Norfolk way, really, really nice guys. I can't remember their names now. I know Mitch was one of them. I think Ian was the other guy, I can't remember his name. Really, really nice guys, got out, said hello. I think one of the guys had been there before, a year ago before. I can't remember if he caught or not. I think my memory is saying to me that he blanked the last time he was there. I may be wrong. So we was there for about 10 minutes, and then the bailiff opened the gate, and then we drove in. And I'll never forget that driving through the gate, because it was the first time that I see the lake, and it just looked mega. It was just like a bit of a frozen in time sort of like type water, and yeah, it was just an experience. I'll never forget it. We drove up to the hut, got out and then went to what we say is like the Carp hut, the club, not clubhouse, but you know what I mean, where the meet point was, and the bailiff was there, and he introduced himself, and you know, I think he was offering a couple of beers around and stuff, and there was like a decking area, and you could see like the lake from the decking area. And the first thing that I did see was at this end of the lake, where we were standing on the decking area, just to the right, there was a couple swims to the right. So as we drove in, we actually went past. So as we drove in before we got to the hut, it was the last 2 swims on the right hand side, and it was blisteringly hot day, and on top in front of these swims, it was black with them. You know, it was literally black with them. They're all sitting there sunbathing, and they were just like acting on top of the surface, just sitting there. And even though I was probably about 80 yards away from them, I could see how big they were, and I was just like, oh my God, this place is full of Goliaths, you know. And yeah, so the excitement was starting to go big time then, and then obviously me and Neil were speaking about the draw, because obviously there's going to be a draw, but it was completely and utterly out of our hands. So, but anyway, so the bailiff took us all, we all had a walk round, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I thought this really, really early on, if I did come out number 1 in the draw, I'm not going to pick where the fish are now, because all they're going to do is just disappear, you know. But straight away there was one corner of the lake that really appealed to me. I don't know why. I suppose because I thought once I walked round there it was secluded, I was out of the way, a little bit, maybe pressure would push them down there. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know, but my gut feeling was just I really want to fish down this one end of the lake. But so we done the walk round and then walk back, and then he done the draw, and I come out second in the draw, which I was surprised about because I never normally sort of get lucky with things like that. And there was a guy called Mitch that come out first, I come out second, and I think one or two of his pals come up third, I think it was, on fourth, and then Neil was the two last ones, or second to last or something or other. I can't actually remember, but I think Neil was like fourth. But Neil and Joe really had to fish next to each other, so that was the other worrying thing. So that was something potentially to have a conversation about. But as I was thinking what was going to happen when the bailiff said to Mitch, you know, you're first, where do you want to go? And it's as if for a second, or maybe 5 seconds, it's, you know, everything froze in time, and it was just me that was still moving. And I had a really strong feeling that he was going to pick that swim where the fish are all just laying there, and I was sort of hoping he would pick that, because it would, I feel there was more of a chance that someone was going to do that and pick that swim if the fish are all sunbathing in front, because yeah, it's a hard thing not to do. But I don't know what it was. For me, it weren't a swim that I was going to pick, because I just thought they're just going to go. You know, especially with this lake, you can use boats, literally jump in boats, as long as you've got a life jacket and you're sensible. You can use boats. You can use bait boats there still as well. So you had all of the elements available to you on this water, which is great. And but yeah, so anyway, he picked that swim, the one where the fish are in. And if I'll be honest with you, there was a massive sigh of relief for me, because the actual swim that I wanted was the swim in the far corner from where we were at the time, so one end of the lake. So if you imagine, the lake is, you know, I wouldn't say it's like quite square. It's more like a thick frying pan sort of like shape. It's sort of like it's slim at one end. When I say slim, it's still quite big. It's probably still about 60 yards, 70 yards. And then it opens up into like a square, and we was at the handle of the frying pan end, if you like, and that's where the club was. And the first swim that he wanted was the one with all the fish on, which was the next swim along from where we were standing at the time. And the one that I wanted was the one in the far corner, because I could drive around there, I could get my van right next to the swim. Not that that's a big deal breaker anyway. But I don't know what it was. I just really fancied it. So I chose that swim round there. The other two guys that was with Mitch, they chose the swims along that bank to sort of like, so they could all stay together. And Neil and Joe jumped in the swim, because it was a double swim, jumped in the swim what would be to my left if I was standing in the swim that I chose. So they went in there. And you can imagine it, can't you? It's like, obviously the bailiff said, right, you all chose your swim, so, you know, fill your boots, off you go. It was all like, you know, Murray at the Formula One, like go, go, go sort of thing. Everyone run to their vehicles. It felt like, they didn't, but it felt like that. And drove round, got into the swim, stood there in a bit of a daze for about 20 minutes, if I'll be fair. And I have got some footage. Actually, I've got quite a lot of footage of that trip, but it was with a camera that I've got that's really not built for recording vocal, but there is some vocal on there, which was, I did record. And I've done a lot of filming when I was out in the boat and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought, right, this is going to be my potential home for the next 6 nights, and I wanted to get myself comfortable. So I set my bivvy out first, set all that up, and unbeknown to me at that precise second, what Neil had done was he got his life jacket on and jumped straight out in the boat, not even set his bivvy up or anything at this point, I'm sure it was. And when I was setting my bivvy out and getting my rod pod sorted out and just getting general bits sorted out for the week, I see him out in his boat, and I was just like, oh my God, you're keen, aren't you? I shouted at him, and he didn't quite hear. But what I noticed was that he had a really sort of like nervous look on his face when he was swimming around. And his head was sort of like all like that, like the whole time, like all like that, like he lost something. And I didn't really sort of like, I was sorting my stuff out, and again I shouted at him a couple of times, and he never heard me. So he was out for about 10 minutes, and then he had enough, and he'd come back in. And then I heard someone walking behind me, and he's come round, and he's got a real sort of like, I wouldn't say panicky face, but a concerned face amongst him. And I said, what's up? And he said, it's floor to ceiling weed down there, Pete. There's nowhere to fish. And I said, what do you mean there's nowhere to fish? And he went, it is floor to ceiling weed. Look, literally, he's out in the boat, and the weed is touching the bottom of the boat. There is no spots. And I was like, come on, there must be. And he was like, no, there's not. There's no spots. So what I had done is I had packed my drone that I was always going to take with me. Obviously, I have asked permission to use it before I did, and I never got an answer no, so I used it. So it was deploy the drone, and I got the drone ready. Stopped what I was doing, got the drone ready, and Neil gone back out on the boat. And I'll be honest with you. Once I got the drone up in the air, it was very apparent, really quickly, that Neil's glasses must have been a little bit steamed up with him worrying, because the spots that the drone picked up pretty quickly were unbelievable. You know, there was some amazing clear spots. And so when I sent the drone up, people that have got drones understand it. Obviously, lifetime on my phone I can see it, but then what I done was I flew it over towards where Neil was, and I was literally just in front of him, which would be in front of his swim. So basically, the drone was turned towards his swim, and he was between the drone and the swim. And then I started filming. I was quite low. I was probably about 15 foot off the water. And then as I started filming, I sort of like raised the drone up, and underneath him was what I could say would be generally dream spots. And when I say, well, I wouldn't even say it was a spot. It was like two buses laying on their side. That's how big this spot was, but it was in a shape. And then what we didn't know at the time was the owners had actually dredged that. They had actually, I got some, I don't know if it was someone with a winch or whatever it was, but they had made a massive clear spot in this area of the lake. And then as I sort of like turned away from Neil with the drone and flew it sort of like around where my area was, there were spots all over the place. It was absolute pepper pot down that end. But Neil wasn't with me at the time. But what we did have is we did have CBs. So the good thing is with a drone, if I sort of like just not let go of the control but put it down, it will hover there and stay there. So I did get on the radio to Neil, and I said, Neil, you need to wipe your glasses, mate. There are spots everywhere. So I think I was flying around for about 10 minutes, and then I landed the drone back down again, showed him the footage, and then he sort of like calmed himself down, and yeah. So he got his gear ready, and him and Joe had this massive spot out in front of them, and they got all their gear ready, went out with the boats and dropped some bait down, put the rigs amongst them, and they were fishing. And it was pretty soon, sort of like after that, or about the same time, I was out in the boat also, and I found some spots that I generally fancied, and I put some bait down, and I was fishing as well. So, but you know, it took a while, as stupid as what it sounds, because I was a bit sport for choice in the end, and I didn't know what. But in the end, I just chose a couple of spots that my gut just led me to, and I put my rigs out there, and I was fishing. But fast forwarding a little bit, bearing in mind we got there at about 12:30. By the time we sort of like all got sorted out, and you know, we made enough noise, we was out in the boats, you know, I didn't expect the fish to be down there at all, but I knew the other end of the lake was a little bit deeper than what I was seeing, so I didn't know. Honestly, in my head, the first day was going to be a complete and utter sort of like washout, because of the amount of noise we were making. But I had my rigs on my spots. I knew I was presented because it was a new thing for me. I was going out on the boat, and I could actually lower my rigs down, see them, that they are presented absolutely perfect, surrounded with bait. Bearing in mind there's a lot of big fish in here, and down at the Carp Aquarium, most sort of like lakes in France now, you can buy pellet and their maize that they cook up fresh from site, which there was no reason why I weren't going to do that. I did take some boilies with me at the time. Now I fish with DNA, but at the time I think I had a mixture of everything with me, to be fair, but I didn't have any DNA on me, so maybe if I did I might have caught more. But anyway, got ready for the night ahead, and I think because of the daily excitement, getting up early, I sort of like had to lay down and I was a kip, and that was pretty much my evening. I had a little bit of food, and then I went straight back to bed, and I was asleep pretty fast, to be honest. Neil said he'd come over and spoke to me, or tried to talk to me, but I was snoring the bivvy to bits. And yeah, he walked back and went back, and he settled in for the night. And do you know what? I didn't hear anything else until the following morning. So the following morning arrived, and I woke up pretty early, and I had wandered down to go and see Neil, and he gave me the news that he'd had one, and I was like, oh my god, why didn't you shout me? And he was like, it was nothing really to sort of like shout about. I think it was like 17, 18, 19 pound. I can't remember if it was a common. Don't know what makes me think it was a common. It might have been a common. So he had one in the night. So after I had a conversation with Neil in the morning, and we had a cup of tea and talking about the catch that he had with the carp that he had in the middle of the night. Again, it looked like it was going to be a blisteringly hot day. So I remember leaving my rods out until about 11 o'clock, and then deciding what to do for the day. But the thing is, it's like anyone that's ever been to France, or any foreign country really, especially in the summer, August. I mean, now I wouldn't be going anywhere in August, especially over to like France or any other country in Europe, in that sort of like region. In the summer, it's just too hot, and you know, I may be wrong. I may be wrong, but I just feel that I've got more of a chance of maybe having more fish after the summer. After the summer, definitely. But again, this is my first time of going, so I didn't really give this weren't even an element of my thought process at all, leading up to the trip, on how hot it was going to be. I do remember looking at the weather forecast and thinking, oh my god, it's going to be warm, but it wasn't something that I initially thought about. So I remember it was like proper late morning at this stage. I'd reeled in and thought I was going to go out in the boat and have a look, because obviously the spots that I was fishing, I'd actually taken my rigs out in a boat and dropped them very, very precisely over the side of the boat, and literally sort of like in this sort of like motion, literally lowered the rig in, literally, so the lead would hit you'd sort of, the last little bit, you'd drop the rig a little bit, or maybe swing it a little bit and let it come back. So the rig would be the last thing to come down, so you know full well it's not potentially scrunched up in a small area. But I had a bit of a stiff sort of hook link on, because I wanted that hinge sort of like type scenario for it to come down. I was fishing a Ronnie rig as well on all of my rods, so I was effectively fishing a pop-up. But on this day I see so one of the spots that I was fishing, it was the shape of like two triangles. So it was sort of like that and then like that, so to speak. It was literally like someone had carved that in the bottom in amongst the weed on purpose. It was basically that shape. And I was fishing this end of it, so my swim end of it, and what I wanted to do was, from the day before, I've gone out in the boat and I've seen that there is still a little bit of bait out there. There's not as much bait as I put out initially, so something's been around there, but I know there's also some bream in the lake as well, because I've seen them. I see them on the drone footage, and there are other nuisance fish around. It's got over in that lake. There was these I can't remember what they're called, but they're not fish that I see over in this country. But they've got a couple like sort of like speckly colours down them, and they're probably about 4 inches long. Lovely fish to look at, but not something that you see in the UK. I can't remember. There's going to be a name for them. Maybe I should have looked it up. But there was a lot of these fish around. Loads of big perch. A couple of perch that I see when I was out in the boat were absolutely ginormous, and I knew from what I was told from the bailiff from the day that we turned up, there was pike in there as well. But obviously they're not eating our bait. But so nuisance fish. I don't know about roach and stuff like that. I think there is a few roach and that in there. But it's not something really I see a lot of. But anyway, so some of the bait had been eaten. So all I'd done was I topped up the spots. And at this time, you know, back then, my mind was going mad. I was just like, well, you know, what can I use? Can I use something else that's going to be more appealing? And you know, I was just trying to think. I was thinking, I'm chucking a lot of pellet out there. Pellet is obviously what the fisheries sell, what a predominantly amount of people are going to use. So I thought this early on, you know, I've got nothing to lose. So I did have some quite large sort of halibut pellets with me, and this is in my mindset sort of quite early. Sort of maybe I should put one out on a pellet, but later on, thinking about it, even though it did work out for me, potentially it could have been a big mistake, but we'll come to that in a minute. So I've gone out in the boat, had a good scout around. Just to my right on my swim, there was I was obviously in the corner. There was not another swim to my right, apart from on the other bank, sort of like a little bit of a distance away. There's like a little bit of a cut of the lake, where it goes quite shallow, and no one was fishing around at that point. So effectively, you can only, if you walk past my swim behind me and then gone round the lake, you can only come back the same way. So there was no one to my right at this point. So I knew I had a massive sort of like bit of water to sort of play with, and I was just having a good look around. And to my right there was like a reed bed that's going along the tree line. There's no swims in this section at all. So and it was very, very clear, sort of like quite close up to the reed bed. It seemed the weed in there was weed that I've never seen before, ever, anywhere that I've ever fished. It was like a duvet type weed. It was really, really thick, and you know, I remember casting out my marker float, which I've got sort of like £30 braid on, and my marker float I cast a little bit short and it went into this weed, and I physically couldn't reel it in. I was trying to pull it straight on. I didn't want to snap it. Weren't having none of it. I had to go out in the boat and then loosen it up. That's how thick this weed is. So that was in the back of my mind then, about if I was lucky enough on this trip to hook something, I need to be very wary of that. So having another look along the reed line, just to my right, it was very clear along there, and there was a big space along those reed line. It was clear, and so what I did was I did have a rod over there, but I did sprinkle a fair bit of bait around. So the mentality behind that was, I wanted to see if it was being picked up, because then at this stage I'm looking for the fish. I don't know where they are. So I was seeing if they were sort of like visiting the areas in the daytime or in the night time, and the only way that I could effectively know that is by putting bait around to see if it was being cleared. So I was putting like little pouchfuls of bait, not sort of like scattering it about, like literally like a handful of bait and literally just dropping it. So there was like stepping stones of bait, if you like, and they're probably about 2 meters distance away from each other, and I'd done this right along the reed line, so that was going to be something I would come back and check the next day when I go out in the boat. But I did put my right hand rod over in that spot. So my left hand rod, again, I was going to go and put back out on the, I'm going to call it the egg timer, the 2 triangles, but this end of it. And my left hand rod was another spot that was very, very clear, a lot further out. When I say a lot further out, probably half the distance between the middle rod and my swim. It was further out towards the middle of the lake. There was another clear patch there. So effectively my left hand rod was the furthest rod away, then it was coming in shorter, and then it was coming in shorter. So the left hand rod, the right hand rod, sorry, was really, really short, and I was confident that if I did fish over to the reeds, I wouldn't cut myself off, in the fact that if carp were swimming around, they were coming in close to me and going around, there's less of a chance of me cutting myself off. So but what I did was I was using boilies on 2 rods. So my right hand rod in the reeds, I used a Central IB, and my left hand rod, which is the further out spot, I think I not drilled, but I think I used some maize actually on that rod. I can't exactly remember. I think I used some maize, but the middle rod, the one that was on the egg timer, the 2 triangles, I put a big halibut pellet. And the mistake that I didn't think about at this stage, that I should have done, was obviously halibut pellet does go softer in the water over a period of time, and after this evening or this night, from then on, if I was going to fish with a halibut pellet, I did put a halibut pellet in my water bucket and left it in there with water. So the fact is that if that starts getting soft, I know full well that my hook length is getting the same way. So that's the way I determined that. But without fast forwarding, I didn't put the rods out straight away, but that's what I made my mind up that I was going to do, is put this rod out on maybe a halibut pellet, and just use pellet that I've brought from the fishery. So I didn't cast out because I didn't feel that there was any chance. I did fly the drone again to have a good look around and actually managed to spot some fish, some really decent fish as well. And what I did find from this footage was that they were actively moving around, and they were inspecting these little clear spots, and all they were doing was swimming around, literally diving down, inspecting these clear spots, and then coming back up again. And I watched the footage a couple of times in my bivvy after I'd done it, and I was thinking, they're going around, so they know where this bait is. They're not silly. So are they thinking that they're going to come back to that? Are they not hungry right now? From the footage that I see, they were very much sort of like just mooching around. They weren't, really sort of like looking like they were getting their head down. And up to that point, I didn't feel that there was any chance of catching a fish in the daytime. So just because it was too warm, and obviously in the evening the temperature dropped. I didn't look to see what the pressure was. That was the regret that I do have now. I should have sort of like been more thoughtful of things like that in regards to gathering information. But I didn't do it at the time, so I can only imagine that the pressure was probably high. That time of the year with that weather, it was probably high anyway. So, and in the evenings, obviously the pressure dropped a little bit. So that's obviously that's what helps a fair bit, because all of the takes did happen early in the morning. So apart from one fish come in the daytime, but that was more in the deep water, and that's what the guys, the other three guys had. One of them had a fish in the daytime. But so at this point it's Sunday. Reeled my rods in quite early, went out in the boat, checked the spots. A little bit of bait had gone, not all of it, but I felt confident enough that the fish were mooching in and around. And I think the first night potentially what I did do is I put the rigs on these clear spots, but I put them in the middle of the spot. So effectively, because it had a big wall of weed around it, the line potentially would have gone over the weed and then come down at an angle. So if the fish were swimming in there, they would have felt the line. Not necessarily saying that's what did happen, but it was just my mindset that I was thinking, well, what I've got to do is I'm going to have to slack right off and make sure that the lead is literally on the borderline of the clear area. So effectively the lead is in the weed and then the rig is completely clear. So it's like the line is going straight down the wall of the weed. And then if the fish swim in there from any direction, any angle, they're not going to feel the line. So that's what I worked out pretty quick that I needed to do. So, and that's what I did do when the evening come and I was going to put the rods out. So I come back in the boat and spoke to Neil and told him what I see. And I think the day sort of went really, really fast. Nothing happened at all. And then it come to sort of like early evening where everyone around the lake had the food package, so they wandered off to the club house and had their dinner, and I sat in my swim, which I was happy to do, and cooked myself some food, spoke to my family and stuff, and after that sort of cleaned up, and then I thought, well, do you know what, it's the evening started to cool down a lot now. Maybe I left it a little bit late in hindsight, and I decided to put the rods out. So that's exactly what I done, and I felt really confident that evening because I feel that the rods went out. I say went out, I'm dropping them from my boat, but the rigs were placed. There was no way in this earth they would have been better placed in regards to how I presented them. Maybe not in the right area of the lake at the time, but I was super confident with them. So got them out pretty quick. Didn't really put a massive amount of bait out. Got them out pretty quick, come back, tether the boat up, settled down for the evening. I think Neil come over because he was in the swim next door. I went out, sat with Neil, I had my sounder box with me. I was only literally probably about 30 feet away, and the evening dwindled away, and it started getting dark, and went back to my bivvy because I was tired and ended up dozing off pretty quickly. But then I remember waking up, I think it was around about 1:30, 2 o'clock, to a couple of beeps. And so of course in the eagerness, and nothing changes now, even with now, if I get a couple of beeps, I'm flying out of bed like it's a flying run, like I'm expecting something, absolutely shit myself. And then it was just a couple of beeps, and I thought it was a liner. But then I went for a wee, and I was thinking about putting the kettle on because suddenly I was awake then, and so I did do. I put the kettle on and had a quick cup of tea. Sat there for about 10 minutes just listening to the sound that was surrounding me, and decided to try and get my head back down and go back to sleep, and I fell asleep pretty quick again. After that initial sort of a couple of bleeps of me getting up, I kept on getting liners for about an hour after that, and after about half an hour of me dozing off from the first time after I got woken up, I couldn't get back to sleep, and I was laying there in my bivvy, sort of like half awake, feeling a little bit tired but half awake, thinking that I didn't know if this was if this was going to go off or not. And then my confidence was growing. I was thinking definitely there's liners, even though I'm fishing sort of like pretty slacks. And then I was thinking, well, maybe the fish are closer into me because the line is laying on top of the weed, and I'm fishing quite slack because I wanted it to sink. So I didn't quite understand it. Maybe the fish are swimming along the top of the weed but quite close, and maybe they're having a route around. I didn't know at this stage. And literally about an hour later, so this time it was literally about 4 o'clock, I felt myself, it went a bit quiet, then I felt myself drifting off, and it was about 4 o'clock at this stage, and 4 o'clock in the morning, and when you're at that stage where you're laying there and you're sort of half asleep, half awake, and I had another couple of bleeps, and at this stage I thought, oh, no, liner, and I didn't really move much. And then I'm not sure how much time after that it was, how much longer after that, but my middle rod absolutely melted off, like taking line, ridiculous. The alarms were just one noise, and I've jumped out of bed, didn't even get a chance to get my flip-flops on. The swim is sawdust, not sawdust, wood chippings, and I didn't even sort of like worry about that at all, running to my rods. So I've grabbed the rod, the reels that I was using at the time, which I've still got, which are amazing reels actually. They are the penners, the bait runners. I can't remember what model they are, but they're penners. And reeled into it initially to engage out of the bait runner mechanism, and felt the rod, and it was bent. And it was my brand new set of rods. I had 13-foot 3.5 test curve Sonic Vader X's, and all I felt was a weight on there straight away, like a big weight, and I felt it moving, because for a second I was concerned that the fish had weeded me up, and but I felt it moving, and I was like, no, it's not weeding me up, it's still moving. So it can't move in weeds, so obviously it's moving. And I was probably one of the luckiest ones, because what it's obviously done is, especially where I was fishing on this spot, that I was this end of it, so obviously it's taking it and it's probably run along the spot, and the spot is probably about the size of a car, and it's got to the weed and it's gone up and over the weed and kept on going, and I've intercepted it at this point, and I've felt the fish. It's jet black out there. You know, my head torch was back at the bivvy, because I'd run straight down because I could see the light of the alarm. So I've managed to walk back, and what I'd done was I left my head torch literally by my door of my bivvy, so I knew it'd always be there. And literally I've just knelt down, grabbed it, got my flip flops on, put my head torch on, and I'm on the jetty at this stage. And then I was thinking, oh my god, my CB's back in the bivvy and I don't know where it is. So I've just shouted, Neil, and I could hear my voice echo across the lake, and I never heard anything. And then I've gone for it again. I'm like, Neil, and all I've heard is like that. And I went, Neil, and he went, yeah. I said, I'm in. And then I've heard him sort of like get his gear ready and come walking round. And I'll be honest, back then I've never been pleased to see someone so much in my life, because this lake, I've never fished a lake like this before with this calibre of fish in it. So God knows what I'd hooked into at this stage. I had no idea, and I couldn't even say to you that I knew it was a big one, because the truth be known, I didn't, because before I had this fish, my PB was half the size of what this fish is, what this fish was, and but I didn't know it. So maybe that was the naivety of me, not knowing on how big it was. So at this point, the fish is God knows where. I didn't want to show my head torch on it because I was worried about sort of spooking it even more. But what I will say is all the fish felt like was just like a heavy weight. It wasn't. I mean, it took line a couple of times, but not what I would call sort of like stripping line off. It was just like a pull, and it was just taking line off, so it weren't ripping it off. But it was like a strong force, and it was just waddling about. And so Neil was talking to me throughout, and he was like, what does it feel like? And I was just like, it just feels heavy, just feels absolutely heavy. And you know, I'm not going to say that I weren't, but I was absolutely bricking it at this point. And but at the same time, as stupid as it sounds, I was bricking it, but I felt calm-ish. I know that don't make any sense, but because I didn't know what to expect. Obviously it was a fish, and for me thinking about what was in there and what possibly it could be, you know, I didn't know. It was one. I think about it now quite a lot, and honestly I don't know. But I was playing it in, and I was being sort of like really forgiving with playing it. Maybe in hindsight more, you know, than what I should have done, because I probably risked losing it with the amount of weed that was out there and how thick the weed was. I didn't actually contemplate about going out in a boat at night time. I didn't even give it a thought. But lucky enough I didn't have to do that. So I see the fish come up to the surface in front of me. I don't know how far. It wasn't mega like far away, but it was quite close. It weren't that far, and I turned my head torch on at this point, and I could see that sort of like the rings in the water where it's broken the surface, and Neil jumped in. Neil jumped. Well, I say jumped in. He literally he walked straight in, and he was probably up to his knees, and he had the net, and he was probably about 15 feet in front of me, and all he said was, it's like, Pete, you're higher up than I am, so the best thing to do is just stay where you are. You know, that normal thing when you're with someone and they're sort of like talking you in, which is fine. And I was reading it in, and I knew it was coming in. I said, it's coming in. So I don't know how long the fight lasted for. I don't know how long I had it on for. But at this stage, it was in front of Neil, and then it broke the surface again, and I had my head torch on, and so did he. And I'll never forget it. I'm never going to forget it for the rest of my life. All I heard, so Neil had a better sight of it than I did, because he was a lot closer to it. And all I heard Neil say was, fuck me. And then I heard him, and I was just about to say, what? And then all he said after that is, like, Pete, for God's sake, just walk backwards, walk really slowly, walk back. And then I see the fish at this point, but I'm still a distance away, and I thought, you know, that's a lovely fish, that. But I wasn't aware of how big it was. It's gone in the net, and literally Neil's gone, oh my God, Pete, oh my God. And I'm like, really? And he went, yeah, that is your PB, without a shadow of a doubt. That is an absolute beast. And the relief for me getting that fish, I can't even contemplate it. I can't even explain it. I reeled in the slack and walked over to Neil, put my rod down, and I'd appear in it, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. For my first time in France fishing, so at this time it's Monday morning technically, at just after 4 o'clock in the morning, and France time, of course, not that it makes any difference. So myself and Neil were standing there, and I was just in a daze, just like looking in the net at this fish, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so I'm sure Neil said at this point, right, let me go and get the weighing scales and stuff all sorted out, and I'll be back So there was probably a couple of minutes that I was on my own in my swim. The fish was in the net, so I decided to get my phone out and do something that I never planned. It's just the way that I filmed it, and I continue to do that even today. I was back by my bivvy, I turned my phone on, but I was still in a little bit of shock at this stage, and you can tell it sounds like I'm out of breath. It sounds like I've just like run 500 meters or something, because I'm proper like out of breath. I don't know if that was the adrenaline or whatever. It must have been. So I done a little video when I was there on my own, just waiting for Neil to come round. Well, after my rod's knocking like mad for an hour, just like slight little knocks, I've had a scream intake, and I am blown away to have this absolute monster in the net. Oh my God. So I done that video, and literally probably about half a minute later, Neil and Joe come walking around the corner, and Joe had a look in the net, and he was like, oh my god. So I didn't know. I knew it was going to be my PB. That was for a dead cert. It was my PB, because my PB wasn't what I would call massive anyway. So I knew it was a PB, but fish sizes. I think the biggest fish that I had seen in the flesh up to that stage was a 31-pound common, I think. That the biggest fish that I've seen, not that I've caught, and I thought that was an absolute Goliath when I see that. And so I didn't know, and I knew it looked bigger than that, but I didn't know how serious. So Neil was saying that's a 40, that's a good 40, that is, all day long. But so I didn't say nothing because I didn't know. So I unhooked it in the net. The hook come out, or was it out in the net? I can't remember. But I know I unhooked it in the net. I got the hook out, got the rig out, took that away. Down at the aquarium, which I think most lakes do, they provide you with unhooking mats and slings, and obviously the net. So I'd done everything I needed to do, put it in the sling, zipped it all up, checked it all, and me and Neil lifted it up. As soon as I lifted it up, I was like, oh my God. And I think Neil even said that, was like, Jesus Christ. And then we pulled it over to, already had the tripod and that all sorted out, and literally got it underneath the tripod. At this stage, yes, we did zero in the sling. We must have done. So that was already zeroed in. That's correct, it was. So I'm standing there and lifted the fish onto the weighing scales, but at this stage I couldn't see the scales because they were at the back of me. And this is something that's also continued to this day with everyone that I go for, and even I've done the same with Neil when he had his English 50 that he had. So I made Neil made me so with Neil's English 50 that he had, he can't stand in front of the scales. He couldn't stand in front of the scales to see how big it was. So that wasn't planned, but that's what happened when I had this fish. So I was standing behind the scales and I didn't see it, and as soon as the fish has gone onto the scales, again I couldn't see the scales. So Neil was weighing the fish, and always gone into, oh my God, it's not a 40, and I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a general idea. I wouldn't have, if I never seen it, obviously I would have looked at the scales, but you know, if he had weighed it and he said it was 39, I would have just taken his word for it, because I honestly did not know. But he said it's not a 40, and I'm like, oh right, okay. And he went, it's 50. I went, shut up. I couldn't believe what I just heard, and I went, what is it? And initially he said 50, what did he say, 53.6 or something like that, and I was like, you know, I was, yeah, I'll take that. any day of the week, I would take that. And I think it went a bit silent. Like, I think both of us, I mean, me, I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to think. But if I remember rightly, so we got the fish off of the scales and put it in the water, and it was in the sling, and just left it there while we all sort of like gathered our sort of like a, you know, got our breath back. And then Neil said, we're gonna have to phone the bailiff up, because the bailiff did say, to be fair, on the first day, he said, if anyone catches anything of £50, he wants a phone call, he wants to be told about it. So, and in hindsight now, me and Neil said the same thing. At this stage, it was like 4:30 in the morning, and it was going to get light in about half an hour, 40 minutes. In hindsight now, both of us, I mean, Neil was the first one to say it, so they wish he never phoned him now, and then left it, and we could have had the fish slinged up for like an hour. It wouldn't have done anything to the fish at all. But you know, I don't hold anything against Neil for that, because we was just doing what we were told. And not only that, it was all there, and suddenly we got a £50 in the net, and it was all the excitement, the adrenaline was rushing. You know, when you're in that stage, you don't sort of like think about things like that. So anyway, he's called the bailiff straight away. The bailiff's answered the phone even at that time in the morning, and I remember the conversation. He was like, the bailiff's name was Jack, and Neil was like, Jack, it's Neil, you're right. And yeah, I think, and I've heard him because it was quite loud. He was very quiet, and I could hear him on his phone. And Jack was like, everything okay? He goes, yeah, Peter's had a 50. He's had a 50 plus. And all I've heard Jack is say, all right, okay, I'm getting up, I'm coming round. And then literally, probably about 2 minutes later, you heard his little buggy start up. And he's come round and got out, and he's like, well done, and blah, blah, blah. Got the fish out, checked it all over, and started to get ready to do the pictures, which Jack had my camera, and Joe was behind me doing a little bit of filming with his phone as well, and that's really the only footage that I've got of that. So We got the fish out after the initial shock, and me still trying to mini process exactly what was going on with the size of the fish and the way it was and the way it looked and the fish it was. And I was 90% certain it was the fish that I've been looking at in the pictures the whole time before I went on the trip. And the bailiff said that the name of the fish was a fish that they call Hermes, and potentially it's the biggest one in the lake at the time. But don't forget, obviously, if that was the fish that I see in the picture, which I've studied since, the pictures of what I've got and the fish on the site, and from me talking to the bailiff as well, they were the same fish, and that fish was like over 62 pound before it spawned. So it's obviously is it the biggest in the lake? I don't know. You know, he knows better than I do, but from what I gather now, there's something like nearly 20 50s in that place. So God knows what the biggest one is in there now. But what an immense fish, you know. And again, from me speaking earlier on, it was the old style type mirror. I mean, forgive me, it's just me. The old style type mirror, the one with the big gut, the massive rear tail, you know, the arch back, the big head, and just an amazing fish. And I do think about it quite a bit. That miraculously I felt really calm at the time, and I don't know exactly what was going through my head. I was just like getting on with it. And you know, after after the fish had gone back, I was wide awake, I was buzzing off me nut, and there was absolutely no chance whatsoever I was going to get back to sleep. So, you know, it was still early hours of the morning, and I had to get changed because I was soaking wet. And then I just walked round to Neil's swim just to my left, and he had the kettle on already and making a cup of tea, and I was just like, wow. And then excited about what the rest of the week was going to bring. And what I didn't know at the time was I was only going to have one more fish. And say only going to have one more fish. You know, I had one more fish, which was a lovely 36.2 fish a couple of nights later. Bang on the same time. On the same spot as well. So I didn't know what to expect when I was going to France fishing for my first time. You know, there's this, I think, a little bit that people may think that, you know, there's guarantee that they're going to catch. There's no guarantee of anything. I mean, in hindsight now, right now, I am contemplating going back to the same venue. I've already been in contact with the owner, and I'm sort of like processing that possibility at the moment. But would I be going back to France fishing anywhere in France or anywhere in Europe in the summer? No, I won't be. It was just too hot. I felt it just completely and utterly put them off. And all of the takes that I had, because I did lose one fish in the weed, was all early hours of the morning, which I don't mind generally, that, because that seems to be 90% of the time that I catch my fish no matter where I go anyway at that time of the morning. But you know, Neil had his fish in the early hours from what I understand, and you know, that time of the year over there, it was like 31, 32 every day. It was ridiculously hot. The fish were just cruising around, they weren't really interested. And also there's this other little stigma that French fish you can't catch off the top. I don't know, I didn't try fishing for them on the top, so, but maybe I will definitely try and catch a carp off the top over in France, who knows. But so yeah, just an unbelievable experience. And from, again, I've touched on this before, with another situation that happened to me last year over in this country, when I was doing a session on my syndicate lake, and the lake had royally beat me up. for a long time, and everything was stacked against me that day for me to catch. You know, I had a couple of problems at home when I was on my way and when I was at the lake. 2 separate problems. It just feels like my family didn't want me to go fishing. Also, the fish weren't sort of like in the areas that the swim I was fishing at was pushing me to fish. So I'd done something completely and utterly unorthodox and different, and I caught. So, you know, it's pretty much the same as when we were in France in one respect. You know, we had everything at the time. We was thinking against us. The heat, the time of year, the weed was absolutely crazy. When I think about it, I can't wait to go back to fish something like that again. And it worked out for me. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Neil and Joe. Neil had one fish. Joe, which was absolutely gutting, he didn't catch, but he lost one on the final morning. The final morning after I packed up, and I literally just had my rods out still. My van was behind me because that's where it's been the whole duration. We could park on our swims near enough. So Neil and Joe moved from my left round to my right, which is the furthest swim round the corner, which is like a bit of a dead end. And the final morning I was sitting here and I think I must have been having a cup of tea. Like generally I'm having a cup of tea all the time. And I heard something and it made me like look up to where they were, and I could see Joe was bent into a fish, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the way it goes. You know, how lovely would that be? And I was just watching him, and it seemed from my end, the fish took him into the weed, so he was all solid, and he was just getting his waders on, if I remember rightly, and he did start to wade in, and it come off. Absolutely gutting. And I know how that feels, especially from recently. There's filming. I went fishing a few weeks ago to the same place that I'd done my first film at, and I changed tactics on the last evening I had a take, and I lost it. Pushed myself hard to get it all sorted out, get it back on the spot, because it was aggro where the spot was. Got it back out of there, bang on, actually probably better than I did the first time round. And early hours of the morning, had another take, lost it. So I understand how that feels, especially going to France and going through all of that, you know, the boat, the travelling over there. I know that's part of the holiday, but, you know, and then blanking, but it happens. It's carp fishing. You know, I'm the best one of all that needs to listen to my own advice, because yeah, I beat myself up as well, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. So, but France is an amazing place to go. You know, I've only been to one place fishing. You know, I've been to France a lot on holiday, so I've seen a lot of it. But there's so many places you can go. And also don't forget the other places as well, like the likes of Germany, Belgium. You know, Belgium's closer, the canals and stuff like that. Oh wow, I'd love to go there. All of those options, Germany, Slovenia, where Lake Bled is and stuff like that. I need to do my geography a little bit. So yeah, there's some amazing places, and I'm really hoping if things calm down, a lot of us could have the opportunity of travelling and going hunting for these monsters in Europe. But let's not forget, there's a lot in this country. So I feel that I've got a lot of unfinished business in this country first before I start making plans at the moment to go elsewhere. But that was my story. I hope it wasn't sort of like too prolonged for you. I just love talking about situations like that and history. You know, I haven't got a massive history of it, but I'm hoping to make more. And this one is quite a special one. So I really hope you enjoyed it. And I need to get out and go fishing so I can make some more stories. So I will see you on the next one.